Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to ImmaLetYouFinish listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ImmaLetYou, ImmaLetYou. That's betterhelp.com/ImmaLetYou, ImmaLetYou. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
What's up, everybody? It's I'ma Let You Finish, the show 88 with your host, Court and Amy.
88 keys, baby. 88 keys.
On the Pantheon Podcast Network. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's up, Wames? How you doing?
Spring has sprung, the grass is riz. My allergies are kicking in.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine too.
There needs to be a certain level of allergy checkup where you go, it's not COVID, and then you just keep moving.
Kind of, sort of. I mean, with the 100,000 COVID tests that I have stored up in here, every time somebody says, "Hey, we have a free test," I'm like, "Thank you." I feel like it's now like part of my Band-Aid.
I know,
like hydrogen peroxide.
They expire.
They do?
Yes, they do.
Great.
Because I do. Because I gave myself one like 2 weeks ago. So I was going to babysit, and I had been feeling really shitty. I knew it wasn't COVID, but I said, let me do it. Okay, first off, you need a degree in fucking astrophysics to figure out how to use this thing, but that's neither. And I looked, so I figured I'd use the fancy pricey one first that the city was giving out, and it went expiration date April 22nd 2022, and I went, oh fuck, let me use this.
Right.
So who knew? Well,
Great.
Speaking of expirations, we keep saying we're not going to talk about him, but then he keeps doing shit, and he is still, whether we want to deal with him or not, he is still a relevant, well-selling, important artist in hip hop, and he is up for several Grammys this year, including Album of the Year. But he has been, as he's been doing for quite some time now, basically threatening and stalking his ex-wife on internet and threatening her current boyfriend.
I just don't know why people think it's funny or cute. I'm trying to understand. I don't think they do
anymore.
It's like, if this was, I've said it before, if it was your sister, if it was your mother, if it was your best friend, if it was your coworker, you'd be like, yo, this isn't good and we need to do something. I don't believe because someone is famous, they're not capable of acting like an unhinged person and doing something. He's acting like an unhinged person. I am not a Kim Kardashian fan. I do not watch the Kardashian shows. I could give two fucks about any of that shit. But what I am is a person who says she's still a woman, and there's nothing about this that anybody should find entertaining. It's irresponsible, and I'm glad, I can't stand DL Hughley. I'm just not a fan of his, but at least I agree. I'm like seeing these grown black men standing up saying, this is not good, and it's not right, because it's not.
What's happened is he also went after Trevor Noah. I believe he called him, and please, I am apologizing for the use of the word. I am quoting Kanye. He called Trevor Noah, who is biracial, a coon.
Yes.
Which is beyond unacceptable. We're not even going to get into that. Right. It's just beyond unacceptable. But the point is that...
Especially since, why does he always have these kind of words for other black people? You never hear him say that about anybody. When it comes to black people, he's really...
Yeah.
I can't stand that dude.
But,
I really can't.
The upshot of all, the reason we're talking about is that the Grammys have said he will not perform. And, you know.
And it was an unannounced performance. So it was supposed to be a surprise performance.
Right. And, you know, so, you know, the fact that you said, you know, a lot of people are using first of all, performing at the Grammys is not a right.
And remember, the Grammys didn't say it. His people said it. The Grammys said it to his people, and then they announced it publicly that he would not be doing his unannounced performance, which to me also feels like it was done to try to maybe get public opinion on his side a little bit.
I just think that they know that it's a potential disaster. And the thing is, performing at the Grammys is a privilege. It's not a right. He is not constitutionally obligated to show up. It's a privilege. Trevor Noah, who has said that he did not want to cancel him. He said, I want to counsel him, not cancel. Trevor Noah did not make this request. But you know what? Actions have consequences. And I will say this, and then again, whether I'm not just directing at you, it's a general, whether you like Kim Kardashian as a person or not, whether you watch, I've watched the show. I mean, I watched it in the beginning. It was something on, what the fuck, you know what I mean? My opinion about her has changed over the years. But the point is that even if she was the most despicable human being in the world and a fucking woman who gave blowjobs in the street, it doesn't matter. Right. He's threatening her life. He is threatening the children by an extent, and he's threatening Pete Davidson. He's threatening people. So actions have consequences. He will not be performing, and life goes on. You know what I mean? And it'll probably boost ratings to see if he runs out and does the, you know, a old dirty bastard Wu-Tanger for the children.
That's one of the best lines ever. It's one of the best lines ever. And it's become part of the
lexicon.
I mean, he was like, Wu-Tang is for the, what is he? Wu-Tang is for the kids?
Wu-Tang is for the children, because he misheard Sean Colvin, and that was the night of Soy Bomb too.
I worked at Columbia then, and Sean Colvin was on Columbia, and this was her night. She's waiting for Sonny Came Home, and Bob Dylan, who was on Columbia, was doing his.
Yeah, it was not a good night for Columbia artists.
Soy Bombs.
It was excellent.
What the fuck did that mean anyway? I don't
know. I mean, you know, soy bomb, as opposed to, they didn't have almond milk back then. So it was soy bomb. I don't know. All right. You wanted to talk a little bit. Do you want to talk about Top Boy first? Because that'll be a quick and dirty for me.
Well, that's your show. You love it.
I love
all
Top
my
Boy.
friends love it. They love it. Everybody's so happy that it's back.
Let me tell you something. Give me a bunch of good-looking guys shooting each other in the head, and I am there.
Wait, and then you sprinkle some accents on top of that, and it's like, boom,
sorry. Accents?
Perfection.
You're being kind. They're speaking in a foreign language.
It's perfection.
It's a very good show. It started out as Top Boy Summer House, which was sort of, you know, a little, you know, less money was being pumped into it, a little grittier, you know, and then Drake watched it. It was like a cult hit on Netflix. Drake watched it. He and Maverick Carter and Future have pumped money into it. So we have a lot of location shots going on. But the acting is really good. Kano, who we love. There's a couple grime stars in it. Little Sims, I'm the last person to realize, plays one of the female leads. It's really, you know, every show with Black people and drug dealing and guns gets compared to The Wire. So that just speaks to The Wire's importance.
Absolutely.
But it's really good. But yes, I
have that full series on a friend of mine used to work at HBO, and he gave me the full Wire series on DVD. I don't even have a DVD player anymore, but I still have that.
I still have it too.
Never get rid of it.
You need a translator for this.
But
the music's great, and it's a great look at London. It's just a really good show. So it's on Netflix right now, the last 2 seasons. And watch it if you enjoy hot men shooting each other in the head, which I'm like, yay. Woohoo. All right. You wanted to talk a little bit about something that is near and dear to you, which is record sales, or more appropriately, CD sales.
Well, is it a fluke? What is it? CD sales are up 17%, and the sales are up for the first time since 2004. And I've been having a lot of conversations lately with people talking about wanting to own their music again and liking to have hard copies of stuff. And I'm wondering, is this a fad, or is it a trend, right? Because part of these sales going up, is it due to last year, Adele came out. Adele literally sold almost 1 million CDs you know, and hard copy CDs. Lil Nas X sold a bunch of CDs, hard copy CDs, and so did Taylor Swift.
Right.
So I'm wondering, is this an artist-driven thing? There's certain artists that people will always like, because an adult really does skew like an adult artist, and I believe a lot of adults still have their CDs, and they're not maybe as Spotify. They may listen to that, but still have their CDs and the stuff that they like to listen to. And a Taylor Swift, who has that still, I think these records kind of brought her back more to her country base, the Evermore and things.
And an older base. They're growing older with her.
So I'm wondering, is this, was it artist driven? Because last year was a strong year for the artists who would skew to people who actually still buy CDs? Or is this something we're seeing in the future like vinyl, where vinyl made a comeback and people like holding the music and looking at the art?
Do you think it's a reaction in any ways to the bad press Spotify has gotten as well? That people are kind of like, even though no one's getting rich, they go, if they're thinking that way, like, you know what, at least if I own the CD, I'm not like dealing with Spotify.
I think it's twofold. One, CDs still sound better than most of the music on these streaming services, the way they compress the sound, which is why, they're all trying to go like Tidal, which has the best sound. Apple now has this new area where everything is remastered for that, to try to make the music sound like it would sound in the studio. I think it still sounds better. Dude, I started really thinking about subscriptions the other day, and everything is a fucking subscription, right? Everything.
Everything.
Like even if you get new software for your computer, before you used to buy the Office and have it on your computer, now all of that stuff is a subscription. And you start to look at how much you're paying a subscription,
like
and
you're
backlash.
Like,
and you're
kind of like a backlash to it.
You're kind of like, can I own something? So is it a little bit of that? I still like to own my music. I do. I will be honest to say, when everybody at the end of the year was doing their Spotify streaming report, I had one for the show, which had great numbers. For Courtney personally, they didn't even generate one, because I probably listen to 2 songs a year.
Well, I will say this, and I think, and then we can talk about some of the music we're listening to. And I have been lax in not announcing that we're going to have a fabulous guest in a few minutes, Dan Charnas, who's talking about streaming and music. We'll introduce that in a second. But I also wonder, maybe I'm reading way too much into this. I mean, we're in very kind of chaotic times, and maybe there's a security of owning something as opposed to depending on technology.
Right.
Maybe there is some to that, like, I want to hold it in, I want to have my music in my hand.
I still love owning it. In
case the world comes to a screeching
I have this weird thing about, we're paying these tech companies to stream music. You know what I mean?
When you own it.
When I own it and I can pay whatever. And it'd be one thing if I felt like, great, I'm doing this and artists are really getting a lot of money. But they're not. They're paying for people like us who talk. They're making a bunch of money on these tech sites. But the artists are still getting pittance for their music. So I still like to own. I like to pick. I went to try to I've gotten rid of a bunch of CDs, but I still have thousands.
Yeah, me too. But I've gotten rid of a lot of them.
I've gotten rid too, but I still have thousands and thousands. And each time I go to start throwing chunks of them out, I'm just like, I just can't throw out music. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore.
All right. Speaking of CDs, I just want to talk a little bit about the Rosalia record that was released, and I'm going to mangle the title. No, I'm actually not going to mangle the title. It's not that bad. Motomami. Listen, this girl, talk about a rollout. This girl has released like 6 singles already, and she's just a machine. So most of us she is from Spain. She came out of a sort of neo-flamenco background. She's a very good singer, obviously a great, and I think it was her first album, but her first American album just was a critical fave. It did really well. But what's been interesting about her, this album is she's been doing a lot of collaborations with other Spanish-speaking artists. Her records are all in Spanish, with a lot of Spanish-speaking artists, but mainly Latin, reggaeton and Latin trap artists like J Balvin, Bad Bunny, Becky.
This is why I think some people didn't realize she's from Spain. You know what I mean?
That's been the controversy because some people, she has won Latin music Grammys and Latin music awards, and some people have said,
In the urban categories too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Some people have said, okay, she is a white girl from Spain. She is not Latina.
She's European.
She is Spanish. Does she have the cultural right to dip into this? And it's a controversy, but I will say that in her defense, she is young enough that she can honestly say, yeah, but I also grew up with this music that I'm playing with. And this record is very good. It's all over the map. And she is super eclectic. And I would say she's the closest thing to a Spanish speaking FKA Twigs or a Robin or somebody who doesn't play by the rules. So right. I do recommend the record a lot. It's called Motomami. She's all over,
It's a great record.
I think she's really interesting.
And the current single, Chicken Teriyaki, I love it.
I'm sorry. The current single? That was last night. She has a new single out.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Don't you have your Rosalia singles alert coming in on your phone? You're so yesterday, Courtney.
I mean, oh my gosh, I'm late.
And you wanted to talk about this very cool record. You always turn me on to cool shit.
Oh my God. Okay, so listen. There's a duo that Charlotte Adjei and Bolis Pupal, who for the last couple of EPs and years, they've just been performing as Charlotte Adjei, but it's always been the two of them. They're a duo. And they're French electronica world. It's such a mix of music. It's really, really, really good. African beats in there. And they have a new album called Topical Dancer, and they talk about racism and just the politics of being a woman and writing and being a person of color. And I always love her music because it is a mix of world and French. You know me, anything Frenchy, bring it over here. I'm into it. And I just love this album. It came out 2 weeks ago and it has been on full repeat. And I recommend everybody get it. That and the new Charlie XCX album, Baby Crash, is fucking amazing. I love Charlie XCX.
Yeah, I mean, I like her a lot too.
She gives me the kind of pop chick I like.
Yeah, I like her too.
It ain't always so polished, but it's really fierce. And
she can also sing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. She's a really good writer, and the songs are produced really well. And it just makes me dance and move my head, and it's perfect for spring.
Yeah,
it really is.
She's fun.
Yeah.
All right, we would like to introduce now Dan Charnas, who's an award-winning academic and writer and former A&R man, was one of the original writers at The Source, worked at American Records. He was the writer of the book The Big Payback, and then co-producer and writer of the VH1 series The Big Payback. He now has a new book out that I am reading that I have to tell you is so freaking good, and it's called Dilla Time: The Life and Afterlife of J Dilla, the hip-hop producer who reinvented rhythm. So we're going to talk to him about that. And
I'm so excited that he's about to come on because you and I have talked about this for a long time. It is amazing to me that I don't know more about J Dilla because I know his name. I have some of the early records. I have one that is one of the first ones he released.
Donuts,
but I never understood.
Well, we are going to get a crash course.
Full fascination and why he means so much to so many people.
Yeah, so we are going to get a crash course from the expert, the Dilla expert, I'm too. I'm like you.
Who I believe is on with us right now. What's going on, Dan?
Hey, Dan.
What's up, y'all?
Hey, Dan Charnas. How you doing?
Good.
Well, I wish we did have a video because this is such a great album book. You know what I mean? Book cover. Really nice.
Rodrigo, hey, can you hear me? Okay, is my audio?
Yeah.
We hear you. Great.
Right. Mm-hmm. Great.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. It's gorgeous. I'll describe it. It's just like to see people pumping money into art direction for books warms the cockles of my heart.
Well, I will say this, MCD, which is the imprint, Sean McDonald's company that signed this book. I believe that Rodrigo Corral, who designed the book, I believe he is, I don't know, a partner or something like he's integral to their approach for a lot of their books. And I was so thrilled.
Oh, it's gorgeous. That
he was working on this. And I there's a story behind this if you want to hear it right now.
Absolutely do.
I am a Virgo, which means I have a control freak issue. And it was the bane of my A&R career. I think it was why I wasn't so great of an A&R person, because I always had issues with letting my creatives, I was too in the mix, I think, on a lot of things. And so I had to learn that balance of just when you have a creative, let them do what they're going to do. And of course, reporting this book, there's a story about Jay Dilla in the studio when he had people come in and do pieces for him, whether it was a verse, whether it was Kareem Riggins coming in to drum. He really trusted his creatives. He wasn't a control freak. And so I really made it a point to just, okay, I have ideas of what this cover should be. I've said what they are, but I'm going to see what Rodrigo comes up with. And what he came up with
gorgeous
was this cover that doesn't have my name on it. And I was like,
"You're correct, sir."
Yes.
And you were like, "Excuse me."
and listen, listen. I loved it. That was not a thing that I needed to be convinced on. I said, "That's dope."
Right.
But also really I think it was an important, I don't know if political is the word, very strategic thing. Because now that people have seen this cover, it's almost like it's a graven image. Like they treat it like it's a holy object. And one of the reasons it's holy is because it's pure. And the reason that it's pure is that it does not have my name on it.
It's his book, not your book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which, interesting. We can talk about a little later, this whole thing about the religiosity of Dilla. But I think that decision to not put my name on the cover and to really let James have that in a huge way with the block lettering and with the one image, the dot matrix image, like,
gorgeous.
like one of the things I did say is it's got to be shiny. It's got to have some
shiny.
Right.
It's very shiny.
Because James loved that.
Yeah. So Courtney and I have talked about this. I mean, obviously, our backgrounds. And so, I remember being in a room with the only rappers I'm actually friends with, Tribe. They're my actual friends. But being in a room at a professional level with Tribe, when Beats Rhyme in Life, I must have been doing the bio. And then this is the first time I think I really heard the name. I'd heard Slum Village, but really heard the name. But we've talked about, he's one of these guys. Dilla was one of these guys that was like a secret weapon, but really wasn't so secret in a way. So could you just tell us what drew you to him, Because there's a mythology around him. There really is a mythology sort of around him and his career.
Yeah, well, I'm pre-mythology because I'm old. So I just remember when he was like, it really goes back to my time in the record business when I was working for Rick Rubin. And I remember getting the Far Side's demo for, their what would become their first album, and really not moving fast enough on it. Like I was still saying, well, maybe I would do this thing where like, is it good enough for Rick? Which was the wrong way to think about whether you sign an artist or not.
Right.
And so while I was hemming and hawing on that, Delicious Vinyl made them a deal. And really Delicious was the best place for them because Mike Ross saw their creative vision, really let them bring it to fruition. And they had this amazing producer named Jay Swift. And when we heard after the debut album came out, after the success of it, Jay Swift was splitting from the Far Side and starting his own label. I was like, let's go get Jay Swift because that's the secret ingredient. And it was us, Deaf American, and Tommy Boy in a bidding war for what was Fat House Records, right? Mm-hmm. And Tommy Boy won that bidding war because Rick never bids high. In the meantime, I was like, oh man, I guess the Far Side's ass out, like Jay Swift's gone, what are they going to do? And Mike Ross, Delicious Vinyl, said, oh no, we've got this kid from Detroit named JD. And it's just like, imagine the 3 dots, right? The ellipsis. That's my response. Like, Detroit? Like nothing, no hip hop comes out of Detroit. Like, well, JD, like, how are you going to replace Jay Swift? And of course, that notion was disabused in August of 1995 when we, at the House of Blues, when they debuted the video and the song. They had an album release party for the Far Side. And it was just, that was when I like, oh, JD. And then he started to create some songs that had not a lot of commercial success, but a lot of anthemic and meaningful resonance in the culture. So you had Stakes is High, you had Still Shining, you had, oh God, what am I missing? You had the Beats, Rhymes, and Life stuff. You had
well, he did Running for Far Side,
yes,
right?
Well, Running, and also 5 other tracks on that album. So by 1996, he was a force, and he was one of my favorite producers. But there was no mythology around him then. All we knew is that he had become essentially the Far Side's junior partner in this production crew called the UMMA. And it really wasn't until after I worked with him, after 1999, when I brought Chino XL to Detroit, that I began to understand, oh, he's more than just this dope producer. He actually is changing some things and having some deep, deep influence in a way that we had never seen before in hip hop.
Yeah, but what's different about him is there's usually those guys who are like that, and they have that thing throughout the industry where everybody reveres them and knows them. His is really seeped into culture where people have such a reverence for him. And you can't, there's not like this long list of these big, massive records. But I find it interesting that he is beyond the music industry. His name means something just to all of these hip hop heads, still generation after generation after generation. And that's really an anomaly in this business.
Yeah, it is. It is. And my argument is sort of twofold, right? There's the spiritual argument, and then there's the musical argument. The spiritual argument is that, well, he has a pretty tragic story, right? You know, when you die so young, and then you have like whole album stuff come out like right after you die, that is kind of, you know, forward thinking and really innovative. You know, that, so the combination of his creative output and whoops, I think, boy, this is crazy. I'm sorry, my keeps changing on my.
The irony of you talking about a sonic genius and your mic messing up is just
there we
delicious.
Go.
There you go.
There you go.
This should be better.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, y'all. Sorry. Okay. So here we go. So there's that part. There's the religiosity part. There's the grand story that we are all identifying with and or measuring ourselves against, which is this tragic figure who works until the very end, and who is cared for by his mother and a circle of friends. And so there is this loss, this idea of loss at the center of things, lost opportunity, like lost appreciation. We all identify with that, but that is not enough to explain it. And so what this book tries to do is get that other part, which is the mechanics and the science of Dilla, which is that he created a completely new time field that did not exist before him.
That's a fascinating part of the book. I mean, there is sort of this almost like manual, like tech manual part. The part in the beginning where you're talking about rhythm, I will admit that I'm lying in my bed trying to clap. And then I went, okay, you're trying to also go to sleep at the same time. So stop clapping in your bed. Yeah. You talked about the UMMA. I think, can you explain a little bit about the UMMA? Because he has a direct creative and financial and everything tied to Tribe and then the Soulquarians from then. So you kind of give us a little background on that. Sure. Well, Q-Tip essentially plucked him from obscurity.
he was introduced to Q-Tip by one of George Clinton's proteges, who was a neighborhood fixture in James' neighborhood, Conant Gardens in Detroit, named Amp Fiddler.
Who I love. Fiddler. We love him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Man's incredible, and incredibly generous, and a paragon for us all. So Amp Fiddler introduces James to Q-Tip, and Q-Tip just happens to listen to the demo in the next couple of days. And he immediately sees, and listen, I've heard some of the songs on this demo. To my ear, I'd be like, but Q-Tip heard something. So he calls James at his house and says, we need to get you out here, like to New York to do for the next year or so, Q-Tip becomes an evangelist for JD. He doesn't charge him any money. He doesn't do anything it doesn't become his manager or anything like that. He just does it because he wants to help. And he does. And so he introduces him to Mad Skills and to the Far Side. And there's a lot of runoff from Q-Tip's production work. And he introduces him to Buster and to De La and Mad Skills. And then the idea forms in Q-Tip's head that we need, meaning Tribe and our crew, we need to also have a seat at the table when it comes to these production opportunities. There are all these other teams, the Track Masters, the Hitmen, following other crews like the Bomb Squad, right? Production crews that are really getting hits. They're getting a lot of work. They're making money. We can do that our way. And so that way was the Umma. So the idea was it was going to be 5 dudes. It was going to be Q-Tip, Ali, JD, Raphael Sadiq from Tony, and this guy named Michael Archer from Virginia, who we now know as D'Angelo. So it was going to be those 5. What happened was Raphael and D'Angelo were not really going to be a part of that crew.
That's a lot of egos, because that's a lot of talent, but I've dealt with these guys. That's a lot. I mean, I have to say it's a genius idea, but you're going, wow, talk about Raphael's a kind of a control freak, it's a lot.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So JD ended up doing most of the fundamental work, right? I don't want to say that Q-Tip did not do work, because Q-Tip would, in my discussions with him, he said, listen, I understand that there was this narrative of JD, doing tracks and then me getting a cut of those tracks. But Q-Tip said, am I really not supposed to be paid for my work and my time when JD doesn't show up to the mix sessions? Like that is completely legit.
Yeah. That is absolutely legit. The mix section can make or break the song. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing. James is not a mature adult.
Right.
This is his first time in the business. He's just making track.
That's that beginning time when it's passion and you're just it's all, you're being creative. So it's all coming out of, you're not even thinking business. It's just coming. I've dealt with artists like that, especially when they're young and they're new. It's like that energy is coming out of them. These records are coming out of them. They're not thinking about the other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem was Q-Tips envisioned the Umma very much as a Tribe Called Quest was, which was whenever they write a song, it's credited to all of them.
Right.
Tribe Called Quest. The whole album is not produced by Q-Tip or Q-Tip and Ali. It's produced by a Tribe Called Quest. And so he envisioned the Umma like this. The problem for James is he can't make a name for himself under those circumstances.
Right. He's too anonymous at that point,
Yeah, it's all rumor and innuendo. And so then the result of that is that when the Janet Jackson song comes out, which is really just Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam and Alex Rich were modeling a production after the Umma, which is really, JD, that it's like people think that it's JD because Q-Tip is on it.
You're talking about God Till It's Gone. I wanted to ask you about that.
One of my favorite Janet songs of all time.
Yeah, me too. And that's and if you think about it now in hindsight, it is very unlike any song she's ever done before. If you think kind of like,
Which why it was the first single to come when they were changing her image and really coming. That's what they chose to lead with because it was absolute. The image was different. The music was different. The beat was different. The flow of how she sang to it was different. The cadence was different. Everything.
Listen, I respect you both, but I'm going to make a counter argument.
Please do.
Here. May I? May I?
Yes.
Listen, one of the reasons that Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam were able to thrive as producers in the 90s when their mentor Prince was not, right? Prince really fell the F off, right? I think after the Black Album, he was not on the cutting edge of what music was doing because he had not made peace with the breakbeat.
Right.
Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam from Rhythm Nation. Now, Rhythm Nation is 1990, right? Yep. 1991, something like that. 1990.
Yeah.
They integrated the breakbeat, right? The song Rhythm Nation is a Sly and the Family Stone sample. The whole thing, right? So they had already made peace with that breakbeat. Then Janet's next creative turn came with the Velvet Rope. That's the Way Love Goes. I think that was the Velvet Rope.
Yep.
Yeah, that is.
And
no, that's the Janet
album. Is the Janet record?
The Velvet Rope is Got Till It's Gone.
Right, got it. So my apologies to Craig Seymour because he'd probably kill me if I got the chance shit wrong. So my apologies. Sorry,
Craig. With a sword and a knife, you cannot mess up Janet. He will not.
I'm saying. So my apologies. I will lay my head on the chopping block of the master, Craig Seymour. All right. So anyway, the Janet album for me was the turn. The mid-90s turn. And I remember so well.
That's 1993, right?
The combination of the fact that it was, I believe that's Impeach the President, right? The Impeach the President sample. And it's with a James Brown sample on top of it. Papa Don't Take No Mess. And then like this total mid-90s fashion sense in the, like, it was really like sexy and just like totally
great.
But that ethos was already there when they heard the Sometimes remix, Brand New Heavy Sometimes remix, which is what they modeled Got Till It's Gone after. And Got Till It's Gone contains a sample of Joni Mitchell, but it's something that they've been doing since the early 90s. And the thing that it has is that it has a kick drum that is delayed, literally shifted over digitally by a few milliseconds, which gives the rhythm track its rolling quality. And then the bass line is played freehand, like JD. So
I'm sorry. What I was going to ask you then what was, and I guess I have to defend myself. I'm a huge Jam and Lewis fan, so I wasn't like accused, but why was there sort of this controversy then about ownership, or was there? Am I misreading? There was, I think, a passive aggressive reaction from James to that song. For years, he has not been able to put his own name on his production. Then he sees his mentor Q-Tip go into a recording studio with Janet Jackson and come out with a song that sounds like it could have been produced by JD, that everybody thinks is produced by JD because Q-Tip is on it and it sounds like a Uma production. So people started, hey, did you do that? Did y'all do that? You did that. And James just started letting people think that he did it, and also began to insinuate that he did it, and in some cases told people he did it. Okay.
Why would St. James lie? Why would St. James lie? Well, you know what? He's not a saint. That's why. And there's a story in the book that's very similar with his father. His father claims to have written "It's a Shame" by the Spinners. I can find no corroboration for that. Nobody in Motown remembers him like that. Stevie Wonder's brother, Calvin Hardaway, said absolutely not. I spoke to G.C. Cameron, who said he was in Lula Mae Hardaway's basement. Stevie was still a teenager when he played that song for him on the clavinet. Could Stevie have taken it from DeWitt Yancey? Maybe. But, maybe not. It's just it's a parallel, isn't it? Like between the father and the son, this idea of being at the mercy of greater powers in the music business. And that is what eventually leads Jay Dilla to declare independence from the Ummah. Ultimately, the Soulquarians too, in a way, to change his name, to change his sound again.
The good old music industry. She'll do that to you.
I have to tell you just, and then we both want to talk to you about Soulquarian, but just a very funny story. So when Godzilla's Gone came out, so like 93, Courtney? Yeah. 93, 94?
No, Godzilla's Gone is later. That's like Velvet Rope's around 97.
All right.
I believe it's like 97.
Q-Tip had emceed a talent show at my son's school. I don't even know how I conned him into that, but he had. And none of the kids, so they're all like 6 or 7, none of them knew who he was. And I was like, because he wasn't, to them, famous. 2 weeks later, that single comes out. They all come running to me going, is he coming back? And I went, no, you had your chance to care about him, and you did not. Lucian is sitting in front of the TV. The video comes on and he's sort of singing along. And then he turns to me, he goes, wait a minute, Joni Mitchell's a real person? And I went, yes, Joni Mitchell she's not just something. Come on. She's just not something that Q-Tip invented out of thin air. So that's my I
love that.
Ridiculous game. He's like, she's real? And I went, yeah, she's real. Soulquarians, please. So yeah, that's the part of the book I'm now headed into. I'm a slow reader. I apologize.
It's a long book.
It's a long
400
book.
pages.
Yeah, it is a long book. It is. And there's no pictures. There's no pictures.
That's right. That's by well, there's one picture. Okay. There's one photo at the beginning of the book.
Okay.
But that's also on purpose, right? I wanted this to have a particular aesthetic of the grids and, line drawings was the idea for this book. Okay. Well, Soulquarians really is just a catchphrase in a way for what happened when traditional musicians started emulating Dilla's rhythmic feel. And again, just quickly, Dilla Time is the combination of straight time and swung time simultaneously. Straight and swung rhythms put in conflict with each other, creating that sort of rhythmic friction that feels kind of drunken, limping, loping. And Dilla essentially really had been developing toward this, but really it became a thing once he bought his own MPC in, I think, around 97, 98, and started to really subvert or to use the timing functions on the MPC to move elements around, to swing certain elements, to not swing others, to shift the timing of the snares and, kicks and things like that. So D'Angelo and Questlove are in the studio at the beginnings of what will become Voodoo, and they start listening to all this new music coming out from JD. And every tape they get is like worse than the last. Like, what's he doing with this? I say worst in the Rick Rubin, Hank Shockley sense of the term. So like, this is the worst shit. Like, it's just wrong. It's like, but it's so right. So they start trying to do that. They start putting themselves in conflict with each other. There's this story in the book where Pino Palladino, Welsh bassist, comes into the sessions and they say to him, okay, we want you to lag behind Questlove's drums. And so D'Angelo is playing on keyboards in one place behind the drums, and Pino is playing bass in another place behind Quest's drum, but Quest keeps going back with them, and you can't remain in conflict with a beat that won't stay ahead of you. So they tell Amir to take his headphones off so that he's playing on the grid, essentially, and they're lagging behind the grid, creating that micro-rhythmic conflict that you hear in Voodoo. It took a while for traditional musicians to do this, because a machine, you can program a machine and it holds it, but it's harder for traditional instruments to do that. So that rhythmic innovation combined with this aesthetic that is not just JD's, but also back from the Ummah and a Tribe Called Quest, the idea of what soul music sounded like before the machines took over. So it's this really interesting combination of harmonically, these sort of analog sounds of soul, but with this very, very new rhythmic approach that did not exist before JD. the combination of those two things in some way is neo soul, right? Even though that term existed before then,
nobody likes
it
that
is
term.
new, right? And my argument I make is JD is neo. He's the grid breaker. He's the matrix breaker. He's neo, right? So the Soulquarians is sort of the name for this soul group of people who feel this way, who feel that they want to do this. And initially it's just 4 guys. It's James, D'Angelo, Questlove, and James Poyser, because all their birthdays are very close to each other on the calendar. Aquarians. But it also includes some Pisces, got Common in there, got Erica in there. Really, it's about a feeling. It's about reaching back with the machine for what we lost because of the machine. Interestingly, an interesting way to kind of think of it.
That's such a weird, when you think about it, Courtney, this is more your lane because you actually know production, but it's weird to think that something that came out of machine is then going to be like almost replicated to reference it, but not be it at the same time.
And it never happened really before then. Sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love it. Listen, that's the genius of it, right? And I think that is part of the special sauce that just, you can't really explain why that works and why that is. It's the special sauce. It's that thing that makes something great.
Why do you think he was, so he literally set, the thesis is, and this was always that they set this template, which was duplicated to death. That was sort of the kind of heyday of my so-called career was this sort of all this kind of alternative black music, neo soul, right? Everybody hated that title coming out. How did they keep from being the same song over and over? What kept it unique, do you think?
Meaning Soulquarian stuff?
Yeah, Soulquarians, yeah. And JD's contribution to it then.
Because again, with any sort of particular rhythmic feel and within any rhythmic feel and within any sonic approach or harmonic approach, there's an infinite number of permutations and combinations. It's just like saying, well, Bob Dylan only plays the acoustic guitar. What's to keep him from doing the same song over and over and over again? Well, it's just really just about what the creativity that you apply to your songcraft.
What was that sort of, would you say, Courtney, I'm sorry, but was that sort of what you'd say was the commercial peak of Dilla's career, or what sort of started, what did that, what happened next after Soulquarians? Because a lot of those records were number 1 records, right?
Well, not records that were produced by JD. JD never had a number 1 pop record. The highest record that on the pop charts he ever got was, I think, something like to number 23 with The Light by Common. It didn't, nothing he produced. Now, which is not to say
that was a number 1 record. For some reason, I thought that was a really big number 1 record for Common.
It was top 5 R&B, I believe. But it was not a number 1 record in pop. And when we're talking about producers who are referenced less than Dilla, who are bigger on the pop charts, like Timbaland doesn't have Timbaland Days all over the world in his honor. Dre Day is a song, but it ain't a festival. So it's really, the pop chart is just a reference for me to talk about why Dilla is so, why does he get this level of adulation? So his commercial peak was the year 2000. That is the year also that MCA gave him a really incredible multi-layered record deal for his own label, his own album, for production on other MCA acts. And in the next 2 years, he basically pisses it away. And I don't say that he pisses it away creatively. Creatively, he's still incredible, but he is unbound by the consequences of what he has signed on to do.
Right.
When you sign with a major label and they give you a whole bunch of money, they haven't given you freedom. They've given you a mortgage, and you have to pay the mortgage. And how you pay the mortgage is by delivering an album that is expected and that they can market. And he did not do that. He immediately went left. And we can all say as fans, oh, well, I love that left turn. I love the fact that he didn't want to produce any of the tracks on his own solo album. He just wanted to rhyme.
Right.
Great. But that's not the album you deliver to MCA. Not without everybody being on board. And you also have to deliver it on time. One of the things that is a real bane of even, anybody who's worked in the music business, you have to do shit quickly before your rabbi leaves the building. Right?
Courtney is literally like raising the roof there with that. He knows.
For my own, Chino XL and I, we visited JD in 99, right? To work on his first album, his second album, which was going to be his first for Warner. And the reason we got moved from American over to Warner is because Steve Baker, right, was there and liked Chino. Well, Steve Baker got blown out. We were lucky enough that the person who came in, David Kahn, what's his name? David Kane. Kahane,
that guy Kahane.
Yeah. So anyway, he came in and really loved Chino, and that was great. So we were saved then,
right?
And then he got blown out. And by the time Chino was done with his album, it took 2 long years to make his album. Our rabbi was gone.
Yeah, you had no cheerleader. You needed. Listen, the worst thing that can happen to an artist is the person who signed you and the people who are really into your shit. Here comes the label. We're making changes, layoffs, and people go because the new one comes in, and if they will just look and be like, yeah, all of that's gone.
Yeah.
With just
Wendy Goldstein,
with a swoop, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Wendy Goldstein, his A&R, the person who offered him this deal. No sooner does she offer him this deal and he starts working on his album, she gets a life-changing job offer from Brian Turner at Priority, who's just about to take over Capitol, right? Part of Capitol Records. And so she's going to go to Priority, then she's going to go up to Capitol, right? And she's going to be an A&R person at Capitol Records. And MCA would not match the offer. And so she left. Who wouldn't? Right. Women didn't get offered those kinds of positions often. And Wendy is a superior talent, executive talent, right? So she did the right thing. She left, but sorry, James, there's nobody here who understands what you're doing. And then by that time, MCA's rabbi had left the building. MCA was going to be folded into Interscope.
And whenever that happens, when the label is absorbed, most of the roster is not coming with them.
Yeah. And so no sooner does he sort of get his release or drop from that situation. I'm not even sure that he did get an official release, even though he claimed it. He gets sick in the early 2003. And then it becomes another kind of race with time. After that.
He had lupus, right? Is that what he had? Or
No. I again, he may have had lupus, but what the disease he suffered from and killed him was another autoimmune disease called TTP. But even then, I think it may have been diagnosed. TTP is part of a family of blood clotting diseases called TMA, thrombotic microangiopathy. And so it's TTP and HUS and AHUS, all this sort of family of diseases. And he may actually have had undiagnosed AHUS, which would explain why he didn't really respond to the treatment he was getting. So that is a very sad story. Now, lupus can be a cause of those things. And he did show some of the signs of lupus, but he did not die from lupus. He died because of complications of the blood disease.
And young, right? How old was he when he passed?
He was 32.
Wow.
32.
Where do you see his legacy is like, who do you hear now? that is referencing him or who is aware of him? Because I mean, we all know, but you more than both of us, how rap music is, like minute by minute by minute,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the answer to that question is who don't I hear, like his influence is pervasive. It may not be mostly in hip hop now. Like I think it was very pervasive in hip hop in 2015, but it's more pervasive in other areas now. So I think in the world of jazz, he has made as indelible a stamp on a young generation as maybe Charlie Parker had or Louis Armstrong had on an earlier generation. Everybody wants to play like JD in jazz now. Like, if they're not going the traditional route, you're going to hear Dilla rhythms, Dilla's approach to harmony, very much throughout jazz, whether it's a Robert Glasper or Jason Moran or Brad Meldau or, any number of Jose James, you hear it throughout jazz. In pop music, it'll pop up like the 1975 had a song called Sincerity is Scary a couple of years ago, and that's completely in Dilla Time. You have uncategorizable bands, but have global reach, like Hiatus Coyote. They're have a sold out tour of America right now, and they're like, they are his rhythmic descendants. No. They're taking rhythms in places that he never even dreamed of taking them. There's Anderson .Paak, a drummer as well as a singer and composer who flits in and out of, that kind of time signature. And then, obviously the whole sort of alt side of hip hop, whether it's kind of descendants of Donuts related beats or descendants of his more sort of core JD sound. It's all there. This is a time feel that is not going to ever go away. That's what's amazing about it. Like he literally gave the world a gift that no one can own. And I guess for me, I wanted to remedy a bit of his own obscurity in the face of musicologists beginning to tackle what these rhythms were and call them, a micro rhythm, like a digital micro rhythm. Like, no. Micro rhythms have existed throughout all cultures and everything. This is something particularly new. And it actually is a time feel on a par with straight and swung because it is a descendant of that way of thinking about rhythm, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's put together that way on a drum machine. Because the MPC was the first drum machine that allowed users to make some elements straight and some elements swung simultaneously. Why anybody would want to do that, I don't know. Even Roger Lynn, who made the machine, said, I don't know why I did that. I don't know. Because every other machine had, you could either swing every element globally or not individual elements, making them all different, which creates conflict. So it's never going to go away. And so my feeling was, let's name it for the person who actually pioneered it, because he is ending up as a footnote in musicological documents. And he was also ending up a footnote in his own story. Like the music was a footnote in his own story. It was about, donuts and lo-fi. Like that is not JD's primary contribution to music. He reinvented rhythm.
But the excellent part about that is now you have a book out there, Dilla Time, The Life and Afterlife of Jay Dilla, the hip hop producer who reinvented rhythm. So people need to pick it up because it is an important piece of music history, an important piece of hip hop history. And I think we need to dig a little deeper than people just knowing the legend of something and actually knowing why this whole mythology of the man came about and learn about the man and how he created his rhythms and everything. Thank you for coming on, Dan. Thank you, Dan.
I mean, you're so smart. I'm so glad I know smart people.
Gave me so much more insight into him because I feel like people always talk to me about him. I know I do have some of his records, but I'm just always confused. I'm like, well, why do people love him? They talk about him almost like he's a deity or something. Like, you know what I mean? They really speak to him with such reverence, and you've kind of really given us more insight. So thank you. And you guys really need to pick up the book. It's out now. It has a gorgeous cover.
It has
Amy's
a gorgeous
holding up
cover.
the cover. You can't see it.
Luckily for you, you can't. We're audio, but I will.
We'll put a link up, guys, to the book
put it
on our
gorgeous.
Twitter. It'll be on our Facebook. You know what to do. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Amy. Thank you guys for joining us today on I'ma Let You Finish on the Pantheon Podcast Network. Remember, leave a rating, leave a star, leave a review, tell a friend, follow us. We're on all of the places, TikTok, IG, Facebook, for everybody who's like us, because we're all old, and all of the places. We love you. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.